Going on, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Mean Streets here, live on our FTN Network YouTube page on iTunes and Spotify. Chris Meaney here as we bring in Eric Young, the Eric Young. It's been a minute, EY, since you and I have got together. So happy that we are here. Appreciate you taking the time to join me. Week 3 gets underway tonight. We have the 49ers and the Giants. EY, we have a lot to talk about. You can see up the football game, maybe give some props, some touchdown calls. I got some starter sits. I'd love to get your thoughts on some of these players. We'll take a look at our set bet spike league. I am not off to the hottest start. You know, when you start with Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow, it's been a little slow to start the season for the Bengals and for myself in the set bet spike league. You guys have any start or sit questions? Leave them here. You're watching the replay. You guys know the drill. You can leave any question in the comment section. Reach out at Chris Meaney, at the Eric Young, Mean Streets FTN at gmail.com. Tomorrow we'll have some picks and some props for the week 3 slate. We'll also have some DraftKings DFS plays, and I'll show you guys my rankings and projections. Of course, everything is live over at ftnfantasy.com. Promo code right there, Meaney. Save yourself 10%. EY and I may even talk a little hockey as training camps have opened up. I saw your Preds together on the ice, Ryan O'Reilly with Philip Forsberg. It is a wonderful time of the year to be a sports fan. It is all happening. Welcome in, dude. How are you? How have you been?
Yeah, good, man. I mean, this is the wildest time. I mean, for me and you both of us are lunatic football fans and lunatic hockey fans, and it just seems like there's not enough hours in a day to consume all of the information. I'm trying my best, and I know you're trying your best. And the hockey season, like training camps just open, but there's still tons to talk about. I was on like a true psycho on Daily Faceoff, looking at how people are going to line up, and do I drop Michael Bunting? Do I hold on to him? Where will he play for the Carolina Hurricanes? And me and you are probably the only two people in the universe worrying about these things right now, but here we are. And I mean, it's been, I don't know, a week or a week and a half since we've talked, and it feels like forever.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, football, I mean, the game is, I think it's going to be pretty one-sided tonight, but I think it could be very interesting. I mean, it's just going to depend on what New York Giants show up. Lots of interesting stuff to talk about. Some of your fantasy leagues, you're done, right? You're already done. I do this every year. You're like, it feels like the most injuries ever, but this is football. This is what happens every single year. But it does seem like there's a lot of big names, big name first round guys going down. Like we were just talking in the Flex League, Cooper Kupp was my first pick. Hasn't played yet. Will probably play, but who knows at what level. Nick Chubb was my number 2 running back ranked overall. I have him all over the place. Goodbye to him, and it sucks. One of the best players in the league at that position. Gruesome injury, obviously, and it's inevitable for these guys. It's just it's not if, it's when. And if you're a Nick Chubb owner, well, that when came last week, and it sucks.
Yeah, it's really, really tough to see. I had to ask people to stop posting it in my chats and on Twitter and things like that. I'm really rooting for Nick Chubb, of course. It's been a tough week for running backs. I mean, it's been a tough couple of years for running backs in terms of the running back market and, all these injuries now piling up. I mean, me, you, and Jake sat together and we picked together in a row at the Flex League, and you got Cooper Kupp. I got Nick Chubb. He had Saquon Barkley. Barkley is not going to play tonight. He's probably going to be sidelined. Some reports suggest 2 to 3 weeks. We'll talk about Matt Breida. We do have some props for tonight's game as well. And then Austin Eckler doesn't look like he's going to be able to play this week. So 3 top-tier running backs. All of a sudden, Travis Etienne is like a top 5 running back. These things happen pretty quickly. It is tough to rebound from 0-2. You could say the season is over, but other injuries could happen. You'd be active on the waiver wire. But I never thought, into week 3, we're ranking Jerome Ford, Joshua Kelly, Kerwin Williams. Like, these guys are Kerwin Williams he may just be a top 12 running back the rest of the way, given the usage that he had. 95% of the snaps last week, ran over 40 routes, had 10 targets. It is crazy. Things happen pretty quickly in the NFL. So we can recap some set bet spike stuff. If anybody's hanging out here, we do want to give some love to some people that are off to hot starts in those leagues. We've cooled off from set bet spike. EY is going to join us here here and there talking about some football on Mean Streets. And of course, Dangle Betselli will be around the corner before you know it. I've done a couple drafts over at NFC, a best ball draft. I did a underdog. I've done a few underdogs. I did one last night. You mentioned Michael Bunting. I did take Bunting. I took Sebastian Aho. Try to get some stacks there. But yeah, it's we're true psychos. I've I've been visiting the Daily Face-Off page as well. And you and I are taking part in a slow, we'll call it an industry mock draft, because we will have some people from Jana Goldman, Dom Lushizin, Dmitry Filipovich, from PDO podcast, which is one of my favorites to listen to.
I mean, hockey heavy hitters.
Man. Hockey heavy hitters, man. Pete Jensen, Anna, and Nick from NHL.com. We have Matt Larkin from Daily Faceoff. So we do have some heavy hitters, and we'll share those results with you guys as well. The fantasy hockey package will be live on Monday at FTNFantasy.com. All free. Ranking, strategy pieces, bust, sleepers. We'll have some previews and betting previews and things like that. But we are here to talk some football. We will, at the very end, I got an NHL board I want to show you. The average of the top 12, roughly round one. But again, it's very early, but high stakes leagues over at NFC. So let's get after tonight. You mentioned the game, maybe a little bit lopsided. No Saquon. What Giants team are we going to get? They are coming off their largest second half comeback of all time. It looked like they were just going to get spanked by Arizona. Could you imagine if they would have lost that game to the Cardinals? The way that they lost week 1, 40-0 against the Dallas Cowboys. They found a way to get it done, but here on a short week against this 49ers team, they check in as 10-point dogs here today. So this is really tough sledding for Daniel Jones and company. George may have been on the bats with these money line. I don't know where he got that. I messaged him earlier. I said, where'd you get that money line? San Fran minus 109. Bats. They are 10-point favorites here. They're 2-0. The total is 44.5. We don't know about Brendan Ayuk. We know that Saquon, as I mentioned, is not going to play in this game. Daniel Jones is coming off quarterback 1 performance, the most fantasy points at the quarterback position last week. Really picked it up, as I mentioned, in the second half. Christian McCaffrey's been a beast since he was acquired by the 49ers, basically averaging a touchdown per game. How do you think that this game is going to play out? Is that 10 too high for you in terms of the spread? Do you think the Giants can find a way to keep this game close? Because last week, the Niners, they played a division rival in the Rams. They found a way to win that game. I know Sean McVay's taken some heat with the last-second field goal to kind of burn people in Vegas with the 7.5 spread, but they did struggle to kind of, like, Puka Nacua has been unbelievable, but Tutu Atwell was good in that game. Kyron Williams, like, the Rams moved the ball. They couldn't score in the red zone, but they did move the ball on this 49ers defense. But man, one thing the Niners do so well, EY, is stop the run. This is a team that just has been able to stop the run for years now. And I just don't know how the Giants are going to be able to move the ball without Saquon today. Like, it's going to have to be Daniel Jones running for his life and, trying to, hook up, I suppose, with Isaiah Hodgins or Darren Waller. What do you make of this matchup tonight? Who are some players you like?
I mean, the truth is the Giants, can they be effective without Saquon Barkley? I mean, you can say they were only effective for a half of football. Like, going into halftime, they had been outscored, 61-0?
Yeah.
What? And I mean, consensually, between me and you and everybody in the NFL space was saying the Arizona Cardinals are the worst team maybe in NFL history on paper. I think they're proving that most of us were wrong. And I said this until I was blue in the face doing these preview shows. Nobody knows. Like, everybody. There wasn't a single, the fantasy football, the football diehard or football guys. No, wait.
Yeah. What is it? The fantasy footballers?
Fantasy footballers are Arizona fans. Like,
yes.
They live in Arizona. And they were saying, this is the worst team in the NFL. Undoubtedly the worst defense maybe in NFL history. And they signed a guy off the street to be their starting quarterback. A guy that wasn't there in training camp. Like, it. And they almost beat the New York Giants, who everyone was sure that they were going to be better. Daniel Jones is going to take another jump. Debo wins Coach of the Year. Thibodeau, the defensive end, an absolute savage. Like the defense is going to be improved. They're garbage. They're garbage. And now their best player is not going to play for 3 or 4 weeks. So, like you said, with San Francisco already a really good run defense.
Yeah.
If you spend a bunch of money on Matt Breida, my heart goes out to you. Like I picked him up where I could, where I didn't have to spend fab, because maybe he's the guy. Maybe it's Brightwell. Maybe it's Gray. Nobody knows. And the reality is Daniel Jones is going to continue to run the ball because it's what he's good at. He's certainly not good at throwing the ball. We talked about it. I think Waller continues to be the number one target. I don't think that's going to be a secret to anybody. I like Isaiah Hodgins. I have him on a bunch of teams. I drafted him all over best ball leagues this year. That seems like a mistake so far. But, I mean, as far as wide receivers go, his skill set, I know Jalen Hyatt had a big game last week, but he's a rookie, and I just don't trust rookies to be consistent. So I think Isaiah Hodgins could be an interesting person to sprinkle some money on to score a touchdown. I think, there's no money to be made in betting on Christian McCaffrey scoring a touchdown. It's almost inevitable. And I think with the Ayuk injury, like they did the MRI, and his nothing structurally injured, but he got hurt twice last week, right? Like 2 separate occasions had to come off the field because he was injured. And now they're saying that he very easily could play, but does he play? Do they risk injuring it worse? I'm not a doctor. I don't even play one on TV, so I don't know if there's risk to make it worse. So Juwan Jennings is someone I think that is very interesting. End of the game last week, had some receptions. I think he could be probably a high-end number 2 or possibly a number 1 receiver on a bunch of other teams in the NFL. I think he's a really talented guy. He's got the body type to score in the red zone. A pretty effective receiver when he's been asked to do things. And this could be the week where he's asked to do a bunch of things. And I think Deebo Samuel scores as well.
Yeah, I like Debo as well. We do have some touchdown props. We have some picks and some props as well to share with you guys. Tough sledding for the Giants tonight. And Matt Breida, I mean, I put some claims, but $0 claims. Like,
yes,
you have to be extremely hard up to play this guy tonight against this 49ers rush defense. And I get it. You may be waiting for Kamara and Jonathan Taylor. You may have Saquon. You may have Chubb. Austin Eckler, Jamal Williams went down. There's some running backs that have certainly struggled as well. So it's possible. I don't expect a whole lot. I'll share the projection that we have for him right now. According to FTNFantasy.com, we have him for 8.5 fantasy points at a half-point setting. 9.1 rushing attempts, 35.5 rushing yards. His rushing prop is at 30. I think it's a stay away, but there is a slight edge here according to our projections. We have him for 3.7 targets and 2.5 grabs and 17.8 receiving yards. And I do like his receiving yard prop, and I'll get to it in just a second. Something that we are doing, we're giving some money away today, right out of Kevin Adams' pocket to you guys. And this is pretty simple. You want $100? How many passing yards will Daniel Jones and Brock Purdy combine for tonight? You have to follow FTN Fantasy on the Twitter machine. Retweet the tweet. I had retweeted it earlier. You can see it at Chris Meaney, or you can just go over to FTN Fantasy. Follow them. Retweet that tweet. Tag a friend and comment with your guess. My guess tonight will be 440 passing yards. That's it. That's all I'm going with here. I think that there's a real possibility that Daniel Jones has more passing yards than Brock Purdy, just given the fact that they're 10-point dogs and they may have to play from behind like they did in the second half. I think we'll see the Niners use Elijah Mitchell a little bit more. Didn't get any run last week against the Rams, just 5 carries in week 1. And I think Kyle Shanahan, after the game, talked about how that was probably going to be an outlier, short week. Maybe they run the ball a little bit more. And if they are up here by 10 points or so, they will lean on the ground game. So you can leave your comment here. I see people commenting, but we want you, in order to win the $100, you need to head on over to the Twitter account, FTN Fantasy, follow, retweet, tag a friend, and comment with your guess. This is the combined passing yards tonight for Daniel Jones and a Brock Purdy. You got a number there? What are you going to go with here? I think for me, as I said, I'm going to go with 440 combined passing yards. That's my number tonight. What's your guess?
Yeah, I was going to go 465.
Okay.
I thought about going like 380, and I was like, man, don't be a hater. Don't be a hater. Don't put that in the world. Nobody wants to watch football like that. So,
yeah. All right. You're going with 460.
I mean, who knows? This is a wild Thursday night game. I mean, it's the NFL, and I think it happened if the Giants play like they did in the second half. Maybe it's competitive.
Maybe they hang around. I'd like to see that. I'd like to see
so would I. I don't have a dog in the fight. I want to see 65-60 every game.
I see people are asking their start and sit questions, guys. If you can bear with us, we got some props and picks for tonight, and then we'll get into those start and sit questions. I have a couple of my favorite starts and a couple of my favorite sits I wanted to address, but tomorrow is the big day in terms of practice reports. I don't know if you guys are even I wouldn't be playing anybody on the Giants, including Daniel Jones. Darren Waller is the only guy that will roll out tonight. If Brendan Ayuk is active, I would play him. You're playing Debo, you're playing Kittle, you're playing CMC, and Brock Purdy's a good number 2 in Superflex leagues. We do want to say what up to the crew, like we always do. Hey, welcome in. Diehard MMA podcast here. Hockey Talk, the boys are back. Let's go. We will, as I mentioned, get to some of these start and sit questions here in just a second. Eric Rodman in the house. Let's go. Set bet spike. Set bet spiky is 2-0. We'll recap that towards the end as well. Eric, did you manage to get Herbert in any of your leagues? You were a big Justin Herbert guy. Do you have? Yes, you were. Yes, you have a lot of shares of Justin Herbert. We saw them push the ball down the field a little bit more in game number 2 with Kellen Moore.
Not great so far, but I think it will be.
Yeah, I think part of that was on the Titans. We got a high 54.5 game total between the Vikings and the Chargers this week. I think both quarterbacks will cook. It's just nice to hear EY's voice again. Diehard MMA podcast in on that.
Said by no one ever.
I don't know. I like the voice too. It's calming. Eric Rodman. Herbert in his big money league. NHL is back. Yes, absolutely. Bruce East 91. Good afternoon, gents. Thursday Night Football. Let's go. Niners going to crush the G-Man. Puka Nacua in 2 leagues. That's one thing I will say. I have about 10 to 15 shares of Puka Nacua in redraft and a lot of shares in best ball. He was one of our favorite guys to talk about on this show. Tweeted in May when the Rams drafted him. Cooper Kupp coming off that significant injury. Didn't think that Kupp would be sidelined to start the year, but Puka Nacua is a really good route runner. He's a good player. Van Jefferson didn't show us anything last year. I would not sell high. You got yourself a really nice wide receiver. If you didn't draft him with your last pick, you're able to get him. I didn't play him anywhere in week 1, but of course you played him in week 2, and his catch prop was 4.5 plus money and over 43.5 receiving yards. And we think we got that in the first quarter of the game last week. He looks like a really, really nice player. 25 targets through 2 weeks. Unbelievable. Daily Handle in the house. Welcome back, EY. Again, we will get to some of these things here. Lutesta, Ayuk just makes sense. Yeah, resting him does make sense. And as EY is thinking outside the box.
That doesn't mean it's going to happen.
It doesn't mean it's going to happen, but resting him potentially. And Juwan Jennings is a guy that maybe you're playing a DFS. Maybe you're not starting him this week. I wouldn't suggest that, but maybe we get involved with his prop or, an anytime touchdown call or like a little cheap DFS play, because he will get some run if there's no Ayuk, EY.
Yeah, I mean, he might get some run regardless, right? But I think if Ayuk doesn't play, this is a guy that you have to have in your DFS lineup. And you could pick off off waivers if you're hurting. Like you're like me and you had Deontay Johnson everywhere. You had Cooper Kupp everywhere. You had Nick Chubb everywhere. I mean, like some of my teams are just in shambles. It's tough, week man. 2,
fantasy's tough.
Shambles.
Here's the first prop I'm leading with. Matt Breida over 10.5 receiving yards. This is at PointsBet. Again, the prop shop is your friend. Save yourself a lot of time here. I'm seeing, for example, I am seeing 12.5, 13.5, 14.5 receiving yards. But mostly 12.5 seems like the number. I would take anything over 13.5. I think he can end up with 15, 16 receiving yards. We haven't projected, as I mentioned earlier, for 17.8 receiving yards and 2.5 catches. His 2.5 catch prop is plus 140. We had some fun the other night with some of these running back catch props. Miles Sanders over 2.5 was plus 155. Jalen Warren was plus 160 for over 2.5 grabs. The thinking here is the Niners run defense is awesome. They're 10-point favorites. There's no Saquon Barkley. Yeah, we may see some Brightwell in there. I'm sure like he's going to get a couple touches. But Matt Breida, I think, will catch a couple passes. It could be some garbage time stuff here. So that number is over at PointsBet at minus 125 for Matt Breida over 10.5 receiving yards. Daniel Jones, what do you think about this one, Eric? Over 37.5 rushing yards for Daniel Jones at minus 110 so far through 2 games. Week 1, 43 rushing yards on 13 rushing attempts. Week 2, 59 rushing yards on 9 rushing attempts. He had over 700 rushing yards last year, over 100 here in 2 games. Again, no Saquon, maybe running for his life a little bit. And he's a good rushing quarterback, man. Like he could get
the
this
most
on
underrated
like 3 or 4
quarterback
different
in the
runs.
league.
Yeah.
Right. Everyone wants to talk about Lamar. Everyone's talking about Anthony Richardson. And look, like those guys are elite rushers. Justin Fields, well, he was anyways. Daniel Jones has always rushed the ball. Some of it by design, and some of it is out of like their offensive line stinks, and he doesn't want to get killed. So, he runs. So, he's a guy that I have in a few places. And I'm going to start him one more week in a league that I have him in. If he doesn't do well, then it might be time for me to stream for the rest of the year. But yeah, he's a tough guy to quit because of the rushing, right? Like, he's never been a good thrower, likely never will. If it hasn't happened for him at this point, what's he been in the NFL, 5 or 6 years? He's being paid a bunch of money to be the quarterback for the New York Giants. And the thing is with rushing for quarterbacks, this isn't going to be a surprise to anybody that's listening or watching the show. You guys are all psychos like us, but it just creates such an excellent floor for your quarterback, for a guy that's going to rush. On average, 50 yards, sometimes up to 100. So, I think he's the most underrated rusher in the league, and I like having him as a fantasy quarterback.
He was number
one. I'm not a Giants fan, though. Good God.
Oh, my goodness, Jake. How do you do it, buddy? QB and Tino, our guy Tino, big Giants guy too.
Yeah.
Quarterback won last week in terms of fantasy, right? It was a good matchup, Arizona, but it wasn't looking great for him, as we mentioned in that first half, but he was able to turn it around in the second half. But
if I could have dropped him after the first half, I would have done it. But he was already in my starting lineup. I would have dropped him if I could have. And I'm glad that I didn't. I ended up winning that league.
There's a lot of quarterbacks that would start over him this week, but I do like this rushing prop. Like, for example, Kirk Cousins, I would definitely start over him. Dak, you waited out for Joe Burrow. If you're a Joe Burrow owner, I think the best thing to do is pick up Matthew Stafford at the moment. And if Joe Burrow can't go on Monday Night Football, then you go with Stafford. I would roll with that. I would play Fields even against KC, and he hasn't looked good over Daniel Jones. Anthony Richardson, we got to see if he's going to play. Geno Smith, Jared Goff. Those are some quarterbacks that would play over Daniel Jones this week, but you could be in a tough spot or in a super flex league. You're definitely rolling him out. Speaking of the other quarterback here, Brock Purdy, over 1.5 passing touchdowns at minus 113. He's done it in every single game but one. Last year, 6-0, 2 passing touchdowns in every single game. To start the season, had 2 passing touchdowns in week 1 in a tough spot in Pittsburgh against the Steelers. And last week, he didn't have it. Man, he had some guys wide open. He overthrew multiple players in that game against the Rams. He just sailed a couple passes, but even leaning on the ground game and potentially getting a defensive score, I think Brock Purdy will have over 1.5 passing touchdowns. And then one more here for you guys, Isaiah Hodgins. You mentioned Hodgins. This is just too low. It's just really too low of a number. According to our wide receiver cornerback matchup tool, he has the best matchup tonight, and it's not fantastic. The Niners got some players on that defensive side of the football, but Isaiah Hodgins at over 2.5 catches at minus 136 and over 30.5 receiving yards at minus 110. He is the only Giants wide receiver I trust. You mentioned Jalen Hyatt. He's a rookie. He's been on the field. He kind of got them going in the second half last week. I think his snap counts will continue to rise up, but he's just not there yet. Paris Campbell, Darius Slayton, I just don't trust anybody else, really. So Isaiah Hodgins, 2.5 catches down the stretch of last season, was Daniel Jones's guy at over 35.5 receiving yards. And there is an edge here if you wanted to go this way with Darren Waller. Over 4.5 for this should actually be 40.5 receiving yards. His catch prop is 4.5, but his receiving yard prop is 45.5. So I would lean with the receiving yard prop over the catch prop. This is just according to our projections. My favorite props would be Breida, Jones, Brock, Isaiah. That's really the 4 that I'm going with tonight. But if you wanted to just, projections are on point. We have him for 54 receiving yards. 54 receiving yards. And his receiving yard prop, let me just fix that for you guys, is 45.5. So there is a little bit of an edge there for Darren Waller if you wanted to go that way. I'm not, 4 is where my kind of cut my cutoff tonight. I think this game could be weird and sloppy, but 45.5 receiving yards for Darren Waller. What do you think about Waller or Hodgins? Because somebody's going to have to, they're going to play from behind, man.
I don't think when Darren Waller plays and he's healthy, he's going to be the number 1 target on this team. Daniel Jones loves throwing to the tight end. Bellinger was a guy that we talked about last year who was unknown. You know, I don't know where he was drafted or if he was drafted. Was a person that you could pick up on the waiver wires after the second or third week, and he got 4 or 5 catches kind of every week, scored touchdowns here and there. And the tight end is a wasteland, right? It's just an absolute wasteland. Darren Waller could finish as the number 1 tight end this year if he stays.
How about
healthy.
Kyle Pitts? Like, do you have any Kyle Pitts? Are you even playing this? I don't have him, and I don't know if I would play him. Like, he's not getting any run. He's not getting any targets.
If you have Kyle Pitts, you can't trade him. You can't drop him because you had to take him in, the 5th or 6th round. If you listen to anything that I said, you don't have Kyle Pitts.
Right. I don't have him anywhere either, but it's the same thing. I feel bad for people because it's the same thing as last year. You just played him every week because of the name on the back of the jersey. He is really good. In week 1, I watched the game again. He was wide open all day long. But they run the ball. And Ritter, I just don't trust as a quarterback.
Yep.
It's, man, it is tough. If Kyle Pitts had a really good game, that would be the time to move on from him, but to sell him. But at this point, I wouldn't be shocked if Zach Ertz had a better season than Kyle Pitts because he leads all tight ends in targets. And isn't that the name of the game?
I'd be willing to bet anybody that wanted to take that bet.
Crazy, man.
It's crazy to see.
It is crazy to see. Okay, you guys got a lot of starter shit questions. Let's get after them. You guys are hanging out here. Just to recap tonight, this is what I like. Matt Breida over 10.5 receiving yards. Isaiah Hodgins over 2.5 catches at over 30.5 receiving yards. Brock Purdy for 2 passing touchdowns. Daniel Jones for over 37.5 rushing yards. I have this one. It may not be for everybody. There could be some risk. This is just kind of a gut feeling that I have, is Elijah Mitchell at over 28.5 rushing yards. Our projections have Elijah Mitchell for only 15.9 rushing yards. I just feel like short week, didn't get run last week. What Kyle Shanahan said after the game, getting him more involved. Last year when they acquired CMC, Elijah Mitchell was a guy that was getting on the field, even in the playoffs was getting on the field. 10-point favorites. If this game does get sloppy, they are not going to run CMC into the ground and have 20-plus carries in this game. So I'm actually shying away.
They did it the other week. Like
week 1 too.
He's still out there pounding the ball between the tackles. You're like, I mean, as a CMC owner, you're just like, why? Like,
I know.
I like the 4 or 5 extra points, but good Lord, man, what are you doing, Shanahan?
I agree. And I think that maybe he's going to think, what am I doing? Last week, CMC's rushing yard prop was 67.5. He did it in the first quarter. I was like, whoa, that's low. Tonight, it's a little bit higher. It's flirting with 80 in some spots. I'm sure he's going to get there. It's Christian McCaffrey. But don't be shocked if Elijah Mitchell. It's not one of my favorites, but Elijah Mitchell. And then you and I chatted in the green room before we got on. We came up with this. You like Deebo Samuel to have a touchdown at plus 125. I like Kittle at plus 190. And I think if we're looking for a long shot, that maybe Juwan Jennings is that long shot, or Elijah Mitchell, gets a goal line carry. But if there's a giant here, I do believe Darren Waller at plus 390 is the way that it would go. All right. You guys got some questions. Let's get after some of these questions. You're hanging out here. Let's start up at the top. Flex Mingo, Jaden Reed, Herbert, or Rashawn Johnson this week in a half-point setting. Kind of leaning Roshan over Herbert because of the game script. What do you guys think? It's definitely one of the two backs for me. I don't think you can play Mingo at this point. Bryce Young has not looked good. He's not pushing the ball down the field. Those wide receivers are not getting separation in Seattle. Really tough spot. I like holding Mingo if you can in deeper formats. I'm thinking 14-team leagues. Jaden Reed, I like over Romeo Dubs, but I don't think you can go there against the Saints either. It sounds like Christian Watson could return Aaron Jones. How do you feel about Herbert and Roshan Johnson? I really like Roshan Johnson. He's trending up. Deontay Foreman was a healthy scratch last week, but I still think Herbert is the lead. And I don't think it's easy to say, like, week one, we saw a lot of garbage time stuff, and it was Roshan Johnson. The Bears are going to play garbage time football all year long. But it wasn't just Roshan Johnson last week. Herbert was getting some catches and targets too. So I would lean with Khalil Herbert for now. But I think those that have Roshan, he was one of our favorite late round pickups. We thought maybe potential league winner in the second half as a rookie running back. We saw it with Cam Akers in his rookie season, Javonte Williams in his rookie season. I really do believe that Roshan could potentially overtake this backfield or turn it really into a 50-50. But I got to lean with Khalil Herbert at this moment. He does feel like he is the starter at this moment for the Bears.
Yeah, and I think he should be. I think has never been in that role. And I think he's a really, really good player. I think he's got good burst, good acceleration. I mean, for his size, unbelievable contact balance. You see him get rocked all the time, and he just doesn't go down for a guy that's not big. Look at Roshan Johnson is, to the eyes,
he looks awesome.
Is sexy, right? I mean, just a big dude,
man. Running fast over.
Yeah, I mean, he looks like a complete savage. But the reality is can he pass protect? We don't know what we haven't seen, and I think judging by the snaps and the splits, is the answer is no. And if you're going to play running back in the NFL, you have to be able to pass protect. Khalil Herbert can do that. I think Roshan is probably a better pass catcher than Khalil Herbert, something that he's never been great at, but I think is good enough. And the reality is Khalil Herbert is the starter there. So that's who I would go. I mean, obviously, we don't know if Christian Watson's going to play. As a person that has him in on 80% of my teams.
Oh my gosh, me too.
I'm hoping that he plays, and I'm hoping they don't rush him back and he gets hurt again.
I agree.
But if he doesn't play, Jaden Reed is a guy that I know that you loved, a guy that I picked up here and there, in the last couple of rounds in a bunch of best ball leagues, and so far so good, right? I mean, it's just the reality. Jordan Love looks better than I think anybody thought he was going to be. And that offense is better than anyone thought it was going to be. He's still pretty decent without Aaron Jones last week. A.J. Dillon looks like he's running an oatmeal.
Goodness.
He's not good. He is not good.
Yeah, more on AJ in a little bit when I get to my start and sits. I probably will share them with you because I want to get your thoughts, but I'll rapid fire through them here quickly after we get to some of these questions. But Khalil Herbert played 60% of the snaps last week. Rashawn Johnson played 42% of the snaps. Our projections have Khalil Herbert for 9.8 fantasy points, 11.9 rushing attempts, 54 rushing yards, 1.6 receptions, and 14.1 receiving yards. We have Roshan for 7.3 fantasy points, 7.9 attempts on the ground, 31.1 rushing yards, 1.9 catches, and 15.3 receiving yards. So a slight uptick in terms of maybe more targets, maybe more catches, but not an automatic given that he's just going to be the third down back. But everyone should have Roshan Johnson on their roster. I would pick him up and just kind of wait this thing out, and maybe there'll be better spots where we can play him in the future. All right. Deesh in the house means good to see you. Just got offered Devontae Smith for Kerwin Williams. Half point. Do I take it? RBs are Henry, Kerwin, Swift, Warren, Kelly Spears, Gainwell, IR. Wide receivers are Amon-Ra St. Brown, Olave, DJ Moore, and Dotson. I would take this. I really do like Kerwin Williams. I wasn't joking when I said earlier that maybe he's a borderline RB1 the rest of the way, a top 15 running back. As given the landscape of the position right now, we'll see Saquon and Eckler come back. Kamara is going to come back. So maybe he's just like a decent RB2. Really impressed to see him, run 43 routes, played 95% of the snaps, getting 10 targets. he had a receiving touchdown. The Rams hadn't had a running back with a receiving touchdown in like 3 years. But you're getting a guy like Devontae Smith. You're adding Smith to this wide receiver room of Amon-Ra St. Brown, Olave, and Devontae Smith. DJ is your flex. And then Dotson is like kind of bench. I believe Dotson's a buy low. We pumped his tires too. It's still too early to be giving up on Dotson. Yeah. And then you roll with Henry, Swift, Warren Kelly. I think I would take that deal. It is nice to have running back depth. Where are you at on this side of this trade?
Yeah, I think a lot of it's hard to say, Rick, 'cause I don't know what his starting lineup is. If you're starting 2 wide receivers, you don't need Devontae Smith. And judging by the tantrum that A.J. Brown threw on the sidelines, undoubtedly A.J. Brown is going to get targeted this week. It's going to happen. Yeah. It always does.
Get right spot for him for sure.
1,000%. Put it down. Bet on it. No, I'm guaranteeing it.
Yeah.
It's sort of like, to me, I love Devontae Smith. I mean, it doesn't make sense that he plays in the NFL if you look at him. And what's crazy is you're looking at him with his equipment on. He looks like he's going to break in half just by running down the field. He's a tiny, tiny person. So to me, the injury risk is just too high. And you're not going to start him over Olave. I mean, when Amon-Ra St. Brown is right, you're not ever going to start him over him. You're probably not going to start him over DJ Moore, even though the Chicago Bears are an absolute dumpster fire right now. And I think Kyren Williams, like you said, like until the Rams show me something different, Kyren Williams is the guy. And that offense, as long as Matt Stafford is healthy and upright, is going to be tough to deal with. So I would stick with Kyren Williams.
Yeah, like a good point to bring up some context here about starting, positions. Because if you only have 2 wide receiver spots, I mean, you roll with those 2, and then DJ is your flex. But I do like Devontae Smith a hell of a lot more than DJ Moore. But your running backs all of a sudden would be thin, right? You have the backup to Derrick Henry, right, and Spears, which is nice. You have Joshua Kelly, but how long is that going to last? Like, he's probably at best just a flex. Like, I don't know if week 1 is an outlier where he had those carries when Eckler was on the field. And Warren is a guy that's certainly trending up. And then you have the Philly backfield with Swift and Gainwell there, and for you, and I do believe Swift will be the guy, but. We've been down this road before in Philadelphia, and they use a committee at times. So, I don't know if you're hanging on here, Deesh. Maybe you want to add to that and, how many you start in each of your positions. But as much as I love Devontae Smith and the addition, it may just be smart to keep Kyren Williams there and have yourself.
Like, if you look at his backs, like, I understand that Swift had an unbelievable week, but that's going to be a dart throw every single week. It has been the entire time the Eagles have had these guys. They added Rashard Penny. They added DeAndre Swift on top of Gainwell, on top of Boston Scott. Good luck guessing what's going to happen there each week. Warren, as long as Matt Canada is the offensive coordinator there, just go ahead and take a dump on all your Pittsburgh Steelers because he sucks. Kelly, he's going to play right now, but the second Austin Eckler comes back, he's just in the backup role again. And Spears, I think, could be really good if Derrick Henry gets hurt and you have Henry, so you're not getting rid of Spears. Right now, you're going to start Henry and Kerwin every single week, without doubt. You're not starting any of those guys over those guys. And if you are, you're crazy. Don't do it. Yeah. Don't do it. You're good where you are.
Fair. Yeah, I think so too, actually. Talking this out was nice. Trey's in the house. Receiving Anthony Richardson, A.J. Brown, Tyler Algier, giving away Lamar Jackson, Zach Moss, Chris Godwin. Okay, so you are giving away Lamar. You're getting AJ, which is an upgrade over Chris Godwin, and then the backs are just whatever. Tyler Algier is like a flex. Zach Moss is like good for maybe the next couple of weeks. So you're really just, I don't know if I would do this one, to be honest with you. Like, how much of an upgrade is it? The upgrade here is AJ to Godwin, but the best player in this deal may be Lamar Jackson. Anthony Richardson has looked really good. We talked about him. I have him. I started him the first 2 weeks of the season. I had him as a top 10 quarterback. I view him as a top 10 quarterback the rest of the way. I don't know if he's going to play this week. Concussions clearly an issue at the moment. He took a big hit in week 1 and took a big hit in week 2. He does have 3 rushing touchdowns in 5 quarters in the NFL. Like, we talked about him being maybe the worst passer of the year and still being able to finish as a top 10 quarterback because what he can do with his legs. But Richardson, AJ, and Tyler Algier. I guess Algier has more flex appeal the rest of the way than Zach Moss does, because if Jonathan Taylor comes back, we're definitely not starting Zach Moss. It was nice to see Bijan Robinson get a bulk of the snaps and really look like the guy in week 2.
He looked
Arthur
awesome.
Smith, man, like he's still going to play Tyler Algier in some spots.
100%.
What side are you on here on this deal? I kind of lean Lamar and Godwin.
Yeah, I wouldn't trade away Lamar Jackson for anything. It is how I feel about the offense. I think we haven't even seen how good it's going to be. Lamar Jackson is just as good or better at rushing the ball than Richardson. Richardson, it's going to take time for him to become a competent forward. You can see it already. The reality is if you have Richardson, right now he's in the concussion protocol, so who knows if he even plays this week. That's a slippery slope for players, just depending on symptoms and what the concussion protocols are. So trading away Lamar Jackson and then maybe not having a starting quarterback seems foolish to me. And is Tampa Bay and Baker Mayfield going to continue to be this good? I'm not betting on that. It's a cool story, and I'm happy for Baker Mayfield, but I'm not betting on it. I'm not. No. And the truth is Algier has been good even with Bijan there. If Bijan gets dinged up, you mean Algier is an undoubted no-brain starter. You're starting him right now, unless you're insane, right? Like, he's touched the ball a lot. He's the guy that they're running between the tackles. He's going to probably be the goal line guy. So this is a tough one. Like, obviously, I'd rather Lamar than Anthony Richardson. I'd rather AJ than Chris Godwin. I would rather Tyler Algier than Zach Moss. They're both kind of handcuffs, but at the end of the day, maybe Jonathan Taylor is just away from this team all year, right? It's not a lock that he's going to be back. Maybe it's just like maybe they sit him. There's just bad blood clearly between those guys. I think I lean with the Lamar, Zach Moss, and Godwin stuff here. Anthony Richardson, according to some of our FTN data tools, 5.6 yards per attempt is the worst out of all the quarterbacks. 5.6 yards per attempt. My goodness. And then 1.6 air yards per attempt. 1.6. Herbert, your boy, has 10.7, which is the most. Zach Wilson's actually 10.1 at 2. 1.6. The guy closest to him. He might as well be throwing it underhand.
At Dak at 4.3. So, yeah, like Anthony Richardson, great. He's running. He's getting rushing touchdowns. Going to have to learn to slide and protect himself. Already dealing with a concussion 2 weeks into his NFL career is not what you want to see. I think there's a little bit of risk there. I would just have the Lamar side. That's where I'm at. Blurpy. Pick 2, PPR, James Conner, Joshua Kelly, assuming Eckler is out, and Rachaad White. I know Kelly was bad last week, but it was the Titans. I agree with you. I would probably go Kelly and Rachaad White in this spot. I'm playing Kelly. It's a 54.5 game total against the Vikings. We just saw the Eagles run all over Minnesota. You're right. The Titans are a good rush defense. Teams throw all over your Titans. You know that firsthand. If there's no Eckler and playing Kelly, and the Eagles is a tough spot too. I mean, Philly and Tampa are allowing the fewest rushing yards per game, but the usage is, I would lean with Rachaad White over James Conner. Maybe I'm wrong here. Conner came off a big week. It was the Giants. It is a PPR setting. They're 12-point dogs, so maybe he's gonna catch a couple passes. But I do have Rachaad White ranked ahead of James Conner. Maybe he catches a couple passes himself, and he is getting a big bulk of the work, like playing a lot of snaps and getting a lot of the opportunities out of the backfield. And that game could be fun from a fantasy standpoint. Arizona can score 0 points this week, and Dallas could be up 40-0 again at halftime. And that would just be really tough for James Conner and company to be able to move the ball. Pick 2 of those 3.
I'm going to do Conner and Rachaad White. Joshua Kelly still hasn't shown me anything where even if Eckler's out, I trust him. I mean, like, I think he looks improved, but like anytime he's been given an opportunity to produce, he's fallen flat on his face. James Conner looked awesome.
He did look awesome.
I was dead wrong. I mean, this is a not going to be a good team. The reality is this, they want to lose every game. They want to draft first, right? They want to lose every game. They want to trade away Kyler Murray, and they want to draft the kid, Caleb Williams, is it?
Caleb Williams, yeah.
Caleb Williams. That's what they want. That's what they're trying to do. Winning that game last week with the Giants would have been a mistake for them, franchise-wise. None of the players care about that. And if you're watching the games, and I try to watch. I mean, I was on vacation last week in Florida, so I'm at the gym. I'm watching I watched the condensed version of every game. James Conner, every time he touched the ball, something positive was happening. He's a big dude. He's proven. I mean, look, he's not running intricate route. He's not Bijan Robinson or Austin Eckler, but he does catch the ball a ton. There is no one else there, and I know that's a crutch argument, but the reality is he's played the majority of the snaps, and he's looked awesome when he's carrying the ball. Conner is my number one out of all those. Then I probably go with White for the same reason as it's just volume.
Yeah, Connor's the safest. Our projections agree with you. Rachaad White, Connor, and then Kelly as the sit. But I do have this weird feeling that Kelly will bounce back this week. Hopefully it helped you out there, Blurpy. It does sound like, for EY and our projections, the split would go with James Conner and Kelly out of the lineup there. We'll let you go here in about 5 minutes. I know you got a lot going on. We'll wrap up with some of these questions. If Christian Watson doesn't play, Nico Collins good to replace him. I absolutely. Hopefully you have Nico Collins. He was one of our favorites as well. His ownership before Monday was 61%. It's now finally up to 80%. Nico Collins has got over 100 yards here in the first couple games of the season, 36 targets in his last 4 games when the team moved on from Robert Woods. And he has been, according to our advanced stats, CJ Stroud's number one option. The first read has been Nico Collins. So yes, absolutely. In fact, I would probably play Nico Collins over Christian Watson, even if he did play. Where are you with wide receivers coming back from injuries? Hamstring. Jerry Jeudy didn't do a whole lot. He's limited in his first game back. Christian Watson, I could see him playing maybe 50% of the snaps. There could be a big play or two from him, but it is the Saints after all. I think I would just play Nico Collins over him, no matter what. And that's
with injuries. It's impossible to know because we don't know what the severity is. I mean, I think if we're guessing, the severity is pretty severe because he's been questionable for 2 weeks now. So that means that it's a pretty serious hamstring injury. What's scary about this is pulls like this in soft tissue. It's just going to continue to happen over and over and over. Like he could be out in the field and run 5 routes and hurt himself again. So, Nico Collins, as far as I know, NFL standards, is 100% healthy and has been the number one target there for the Texans. I did read a thing that was interesting, like that he played the least amount of snaps, even less than Tank Dell. But when he's on the field, he's the guy. He's the first read. And with a rookie quarterback, if you're the first read, chances are you're getting the ball because they're not going to read 2 and read 3 because their brain is in scramble mode. So, if Christian Watson it practices in full, then I think you got to play him because of where you took him. But I don't think he's gonna. He hasn't yet, and who knows?
Yesterday was his first practice in 2 weeks. According to reports, they expect him to play, but we've seen this before where he has not been 100% and he hasn't been on the field all that much. But he definitely has the higher ceiling. I think you're in a good spot there with both of those guys. But if Watson doesn't suit up, you go Nico. We'll rapid fire through some more of these other ones here. Alex in the house, Marquise Brown, Robert Woods, or Jalen Warren there in a full point PPR setting. It does seem like Warren is really knocking on the door. I like Najee Harris this week as a bounce back spot. You can run on the Raiders, but Jalen Warren isn't getting a lot of carries, but he's certainly getting a lot of targets out of the backfield. But I don't know if I would go him. My gut here says Hollywood Brown, even in a really tough spot. And I do have him actually as a sit this week against Diggs, but I would still play him 12-point dogs. I think there's a higher ceiling with Hollywood than Robert Woods. JSN on the waiver wire. Yes, I would pick him up over Downs, but I would not be starting him as of right now. He's still the third option, and there doesn't seem to be a high ceiling there. So a higher one than Downs, I would say. Roschon Johnson knocking on the door, absolutely. Yes, the organization is a mess in Chicago, a bloody mess. Thoughts on Gainwell when he gets back? Wouldn't play him this week. Tough spot against Tampa Bay and what Swift did last week. I think, he's going to at least be the lead in this game, but the Bucs are a really good run defense. I may not believe in Baker either. I think he was a good super flex option. I believe in Godwin and Mike Evans, absolutely. And I like Rachaad White. But defensively, they got some good players, man. The Bucs, I would not be surprised if they had a 500 record this year. One more. If no St. Brown, would you prefer Atwell or Woods? I think you got to go with Tutu Atwell. Tutu Atwell playing
until he stops doing it.
Absolutely. Played 94% of the snaps against the Niners. Nakua had 86%, Van Jefferson 82%. I know Woods is getting some targets and playing a lot as well, but Tutu Atwell has looked really good with Stafford in back-to-back weeks now, so I think that's the play. I would just do that. I would trade DJ Moore for Brian Robinson, and then I would trade Kerwin Williams for Devontae Smith. That's what I would do. I would go Brian Robinson, get rid of DJ Moore, go Brian Robinson, and get Devontae Smith over Kerwin Williams. There you go. Is this do or die this week for the founding father with Akers in town? Yeah. Alexander Madison should be worried, right? And Madison owners should be worried. They acquired Cam Akers, and Madison hasn't done anything in 2 weeks.
I mean, if you're asking me at the start, before the season started, I would have told you to be worried about Alexander Madison with Cam Akers not being there. But this is clearly the Minnesota Vikings worrying about Alexander Madison, right? Yeah, I mean, like,
the O-line hasn't looked good either. Yikes.
The O-line doesn't look good. Alexander Madison, he's just a guy, right? He's just a guy. He's never been super productive when he's been asked to be the number one. I think he's, a decent running back, a very good backup, but he's not a bell cow. He's not a number one. We heard all this crap in the offseason that he's going to have the volume. He's going to carry the ball a bunch. And I just told everybody who asked, which wasn't many people, asked my opinion, but the ones that did, if they listen to me, they're happy about it. I don't have Alexander Madison on a single team or a single best ball team.
No.
I avoided him like crazy, and I'm looking like it was the right decision.
I have more Ty Chandler than Madison, and that dream is dead too. Like that's right. That's all over now. But that was a last round pick, and I just moved on from him. It is what it is. But yeah, I don't have any Madison either. Half point PPR, 2 flex thoughts on playing Jacoby Myers over any of Kelly, Brian Robinson, Javonte, or Kerwin Williams. He has Devontae Adams and Watson in the flex. Your first, okay. I have Kerwin Williams ahead of Brian Robinson, but I would play both of those guys over Jacoby Myers. Yeah, Jacoby Myers, big week 1. Great to see. This spot against the Steelers isn't fantastic, and I would just play the guaranteed touches. Yeah. I would play the guaranteed touches. Do you want Brian Robinson against the Bills, or do you want Kerwin Williams against the Bengals? I lean Kerwin Williams, man. 24 opportunities, a bunch of catches. I have him as a top 10 back this week, and I really like Brian Robinson. But I would lean with Kerwin Williams. And then maybe even find yourself playing Kerwin and Brian Robinson over Watson there in the flex. 2 more here. And we're going to say goodbye to EY. Start 1 QB, 1 tight end. Daniel Jones, CJ Stroud, Darren Waller, Ferguson. Jones and Waller for me. It's kind of what you got to do, I think.
Yeah, but Jones, I told you, I'm playing him. I think I'm going to play him just because the rushing. Right. I mean, just he's going to score you points. It's almost a guarantee. But yeah, I go him and who's Waller for sure. Yeah.
Waller over Ferguson. Another one here from Adam. Start 2 and flex full PPR. Collins, McLaurin, London, and Algier. I'll go with Collin and McLaurin. I know London had a good week 2 game, but I would sell him after that week.
They don't want to throw it. Right.
I know. They just really don't want to throw the football. Start Daniel Jones or play the waiting game for another option here. Howell, Stafford, or Russell. I would I'd play the waiting game. I may go Stafford or Russell there. Russell actually hasn't looked that bad. The defense hasn't played that great.
Fantasy-wise, he's been pretty decent. He's not the same guy. He looks not decisive. He looks rattled compared to the player that he was. Sam Howell is growing on me. He's a guy that we talked about a bunch before the season started. I thought
I don't know if you can start against Buffalo though.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think Buffalo's going to score. Sam Howell's going to have to throw, and he's a good runner too. So I mean, upside Sam Howell, safety Stafford. I mean, everyone, me included, you just forget how good of a quarterback this guy is. He can make
and he chucks
he
throws
every throw. He's super accurate. crazy arm strength still. He's never been able, to run or been a great mover in the pocket, but he's tough. He stands in. If he's not hurt, man, just keep playing him.
And
He's
when
been
he
awesome.
locks in on a guy, we've seen it before. I mean, Cooper Kupp is one thing, Calvin Johnson is another thing, but Marvin Jones, we've seen some. I forget the wide receiver that was with him in Detroit, and then he went to Seattle, but he locked in on him as well. But honestly, our projections have Daniel Jones. He probably has the safest floor because of what he can do with his legs. But I would personally probably start Stafford ahead of him there. All right, we really do have two more, and then EY's out of here. Here's one for you, EY. Full PPR for RB and flex. Choose two: Raheem Mostert, Jerome Ford, Alexander Mattison, Brendan Ayuk, Khalil Herbert, or Jacoby Myers. Okay, so pick two of those guys. It sounds like you need to pick one RB.
Yeah, I would play Mostert. I mean, he's the guy there, right? I mean, with Wilson being hurt and Ahmed being hurt now, like this A-Chain's going to get some play, but I think that the Dolphins have shown us they don't trust the kid, right? They just don't trust him. Mostert's healthy. He's one of the fastest guys in the NFL. Can run, can catch, crazy fast. I mean, he can break an 80-yard run every time he touches the ball. And that offense has looked awesome. I'm not touching Madison. Jerome Ford.
I don't like Ford against your Titans.
If you would ask me yesterday, it would have been Mostert and Ford. But now they've got Kareem Hunt. You mean that's just proof like they needed another running back. And I mean, obviously him playing there before, but that's going to screw up Ford. I don't care what anyone says. He's going to play. He's going to play on passing downs because they're going to just trust Kareem Hunt more than they trust Ford. I would probably do Mostert and Herbert.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at too. I mean, if Ayuk is active today, it's pretty risky. I feel like it may be risky, but you got to feel like if he's active, he's good enough to play. And why would they do that, right? Why would they make him active and then have him on the sidelines? I mean, we've seen that before from some players, T. Higgins in particular. Mostert for sure. It's probably Mostert and Herbert. Yeah, if you're looking for a high ceiling play, it may just be, if Ayuk is active, you roll the dice there with Ayuk, but Mostert's that other guy for sure. And then we have a question on trades. When you guys just one thing to say with these trades, just give us a little bit of context, like the rest of your squad. Would like to know the rest of your squad. Like, yeah, this is an upgrade trading DK Metcalf and Nico Collins for Diggs, but I like to have some depth on my squad. And Nico Collins, I view as a wide receiver 3, as a flex play. DK as a wide receiver 2, but you're getting the best player in the deal, and that is a significant upgrade. EY, we'll get you out of here. I'll hang on, answer some more questions. I got some start and sit stuff I wanted to address with some people as well, but keep them coming in. I see more people hanging out here. You guys can ask the question. If I don't get to it on the show, you're watching the replay of the show, I will leave it in the comment section and I'll address it there. You can reach out, like I said, at Chris Meaney or meanstreetsftn@gmail.com. EY, always a pleasure, dude. Thank you so much for taking the time here. One hockey board for you, because I know how much of a true psycho you are. Anything that stands out here, in your opinion? This is the average draft position, high stakes leagues over the past couple weeks. A lot of best ball. Goalies are going pretty early. That's part of it. Best ball, draft, forget it. No waiver wire pickup, so I totally understand some goalies, but anything jump out at the page here when you're looking at these top 12 picks?
I mean, number 6, Brady Tkachuk, it makes my Ottawa Senators heart, fanboy heart glow, but I don't know if you can have him above Jason Robertson. If it's in a bangers league, totally understand it. But if it's just in a straight points league, I'm going to have Jason Robertson above him. But like looking at this, gets the blood flowing, buddy. I cannot wait for hockey.
For the iTunes people, Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, Nathan McKinnon, David Pasternak, Austin Matthews, Brady Tkachuk, Matthew Tkachuk, Mikko Rantanen, Kel Makar, Igor Shesterkin, Jason Robertson, and Alexander Georgiev. Too early, in my opinion, for those goalies. Tage Thompson, Jack Hughes, I think are first-round picks as well. If not, I would definitely take them over those two goalies. EY, pleasure, man. Thank you so much for taking the time. We will chat it up soon. Good luck with all your travels. And before you know it, you and I will be talking shot props and goal scorers. All right, you can bounce. You can bounce, and I'll just continue to do some stuff here. See you, dude. All right, so there's some more questions here that I wanted to get to for you guys, and I have some start and sit stuff that I wanted to share as well, and then we'll get out of here. So, a couple more questions that I saw. Another Sens fan. Eli's like a closet Sens fan. He does like himself some Ottawa Senators, for sure. Okay, what do you got here? Side eye Muppet in the house. Olave, Jacoby Myers, Alexander Madison for Jamar Chase and Joe Mixon. Win or loss? I'm the one getting Chase. This is a win. I don't like to have a wide receiver and a running back from the same team, but I suppose you could get away with it. You know, the Bengals, when they're fully healthy, I would view them as like a borderline top 5 offense, at least top 10, right? But they cut into each other, right? Running backs, like some days Joe Mixon will have 2 rushing touchdowns. Jamar Chase won't have any touchdowns. Olave is definitely a stud. I don't care about Madison. So you are getting an upgrade, Joe Mixon, and you are getting upgrade from Olave. I do believe, you know, some people will tell you no. The first 2 weeks have been really good for Olave, but Jamar Chase is a good buy low candidate. Is this the rest of your squad here? I do like seeing this. It's good context. I love this. So Lamar, Saquon, Madison. What would that be? Jettas, that would be JJ, I assume. Justin Jefferson. Olave, Kittle, Zay Flowers. You got Jets and Ravens D. So you got 2 top D. You may not need them, but you can rotate, I suppose, through the matchups. Matt Gay. So your bench is Trevor Lawrence, Gabe Davis, Jacoby Myers, Laporta, Gus Edwards, Roshan Johnson, Zach Ertz. Okay. I'd make the move. And you got two roughly top 5 quarterbacks. I don't know if you need to have 2 quarterbacks. You can maybe move on from one of those quarterbacks for somebody that has Joe Burrow. Maybe they're panicking, and you can even just get more. You're rolling out Lamar every single week, right? I would make that trade. You know, you're getting Jamar Chase to add to what I assume is Justin Jefferson and Zay Flowers in there. You're moving on from Jacoby Myers. It's fine. All of a sudden, you'd be a touch thin, maybe at wide receiver. You can pick somebody up to be your wide receiver 4. I do believe you would need one there, as Flowers would be your 3rd. And then your 4th, maybe you can move on from Trevor Lawrence and get yourself another wide receiver. I like you got Roshan here as a nice little stash. Sam Laporta is great. Is that your starting tight end? I don't know who your starting tight end there is. Laporta's on your bench. Zach Ertz on your bench as well. Okay. Who should I start? Sam Laporta, George Kittle. I think you got to go with George Kittle. I have Sam Laporta as a top 10 tight end. I'm going to have him probably as a top 10 tight end the rest of the way. So he's definitely a good guy to keep. But I would go with George Kittle, higher ceiling slightly, better chance for a touchdown there. Yeah, 10-team league. I kind of figured it would be for some reason. No one wants Trevor Lawrence. Nobody wants him. I guess it was a tough game to sell him after against Kansas City. He didn't do a whole lot, but maybe he has a big game here against the Texans, and maybe that's an opportunity to sell him. You know what? Honestly, maybe sell Lamar. Maybe just roll Trevor Lawrence. I know it feels like a bit of a downgrade, but Trevor Lawrence is going to have some nice moments, and people will want Lamar. And the return package will be nicer for Lamar Jackson. I think you want to move on from one of those 2 quarterbacks. I don't think you need 2 in a 10-team league. It's really tough to trade, but that's, people are starting Fields, Cousins. Yeah, I really like Cousins this week, but yeah, it's tough to trade. 10-team leagues, I'd probably move on from one of those quarterbacks if I could. Maybe that answer is Lamar. Pick 2: Godwin, Terry, Jacoby, Brandon Cooks. It's the first 2. Godwin, I know it's been a lot of Mike Evans, but Godwin this week, the Eagles will struggle all year long covering tight ends and slot wide receivers in the middle of the field. Darius Slay will be on Mike Evans. I would still start Mike Evans, but I think this is going to be a Godwin week. Terry had the touchdown last week in a tough spot against Patrick Surtain. I know it's against the Bills, but I would go with Terry there. Brandon Cooks is not touching my starting lineup at the moment until Dallas gets into some competitive games. And I don't think he's fully 100%. And Jacoby Myers, a tough spot against the Steelers. I think there's a slightly higher ceiling there for Terry. I have a couple start and sit stuff that I wanted to share with you guys here, and then we're going to get out. So maybe this will help some people. A friendly reminder, I know some people are jumping in the show right now. Win $100. We want to give away $100 cash to you tonight. How many passing yards will Jones and Purdy combine for? All you have to do is follow FTN Fantasy on the Twitter machine, retweet their tweet that has this graphic in it, retweet it, follow FTN Fantasy, and tag a friend and comment with your guess. My guess tonight is 440 combined passing yards from Daniel Jones and Brock Purdy. Eric Young went with 460 passing yards. So head on over to Twitter, the X machine, make an account. It's $100. We're going to be doing this every Thursday and Monday night. We're doing some giveaways and things like that. So follow FTN Fantasy, retweet, and tag a friend, and give your guess for tonight. All right, so I got some starter sit stuff. I'm going to start with the starts. These are people that I like. I try to stay away from the obvious. The obvious, Travis Etienne is a start against Houston. He's a top 5 running back this week. That's where I'm at with Travis Etienne. These are players that maybe you are hesitant to start, and these are players that would start in week 3. Starting with Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins coming off a fantastic game against the Philadelphia Eagles under the bright lights in prime time. This is a game total that has moved from 51.5 to 54.5. We have Justin Jefferson. We have Jordan Addison, who's skyrocketing up my rankings and projections every single week. TJ Hawkinson's one of our favorites on this show. This could be a fun, fantasy-friendly game. Kirk Cousins is a top 10 quarterback this week. Brian Robinson Jr., 146 rushing yards, two touchdowns on the ground on 37 carries through his first 2 games, 3 grabs as well for 49 receiving yards, and a receiving touchdown. He's got 3 scores in his first 2 games. The Bills did shut down Josh Jacobs last week, but they gave up some big runs to Breece Hall in week 1. If there is a weakness on this Bills team, it is their rush defense. Washington wants to run the football, and we've seen in the second game, playing from behind against the Broncos, we saw Brian Robinson Jr. on the field getting targets and not Antonio Gibson. So the offense is running through Brian Robinson Jr. He's an RB2 this week, and he's an RB2 the rest of the season. Kerwin Williams, you didn't pick him up to sit him. 14 carries, 10 targets in week 2. That's 24 opportunities in his first full start without Cam Akers, who is now a member of the Minnesota Vikings. He ran 43 routes, and he played 95% of the snaps, 4 touchdowns in 2 games. Kerwin Williams looks like he may be one of the best waiver wire pickups of the season. Play him on Monday Night Football against the Bengals. Najee Harris, I know you're concerned. I believe this is a buy low window for Najee Harris. This spot against the Raiders is pretty good. The Raiders have allowed not only 17 catches to running backs through the first 2 games, but 138 rushing yards allowed, which is the 6th most through 2 games. Najee Harris is still the lead. I would play Jaylen Warren in a flex, in a PPR format as a flex play, because the Raiders have struggled. They've given up some catches to running backs, and Warren is knocking on the door. He definitely deserves more touches. He looks like the more explosive running back, but Najee Harris is still the lead running back. And next week, I believe they have the Texans. So a buy low opportunity for Najee Harris. I think a get right spot for him. I don't have him ranked as a top 15 back, but I think he's still an RB2 this week. How about Jordan Addison? He is the 3rd, 4th option behind Justin Jefferson, TJ Hawkinson. KJ Osborne is playing a little bit more than him, but a high total game, as I mentioned, against the Chargers, where I expect to see nearly 60 points, 133 yards in 2 games, 2 touchdowns. It's going to see a lot of one-on-one all year long, Jordan Addison. All the attention is going to be on Justin Jefferson and TJ Hawkinson, and Addison has showed us already through 2 games that he can beat one-on-one. Busted coverage, touchdown in week 1, week 2, explosive. Love his receiving yard prop. It only takes a couple grabs for him to rack up yards. And the same thing can be said about Zay Flowers in a matchup against the Indianapolis Colts. They're nearly 10-point home favorites here. Zay Flowers, 0 touchdowns, but 140 yards on 13 grabs. Played behind Mark Andrews in week 2. There was no Andrews in week 1. He got a lot of targets from Lamar Jackson. He's going to continue to play behind Mark Andrews, but he's definitely ahead of OBJ and Rashad Bateman. OBJ and Rashad Bateman would not be touching my starting lineup. Zay Flowers the rest of the way. Nico Collins, we've talked a lot about Nico Collins on this show, finally getting picked up off the waiver wire. 20 targets through 2 games, 13 grabs, over 220 yards. He had 36 targets in his final 4 games last season when the Houston Texans moved on from Brennan Cooks, and he has been C.J. Stroud's first read. Robert Woods is playing more, and we saw Tank Dell get a lot of looks last week, and I like Tank Dell. He should be picked up. Not sure I'm starting him, but Nico Collins and the Texans are almost 10-point dogs here on the road, so there'll be some passing there, and I don't think they'll have success running the football. Josh Reynolds is dealing with a groin injury, but Josh Reynolds is a guy that we've talked about over the past couple of episodes. Nearly 70 yards per game in his first 5 games with Jared Goff last season before suffering an injury. He's got 9 grabs, 146 yards, and 2 touchdowns, 2 scores last week. Had a red zone rushing attempt last week with no David Montgomery there. I don't know if you can count on that. I don't think he's going to play the Deebo Samuel role, but he is the go-to wide receiver after Amon-Ra St. Brown for Jared Goff, and those guys have a connection going back to their LA days. We also have Sam Laporta on here as well. 11 targets, 10 grabs, and over 100 receiving yards in 2 games. Only going to continue to trend up. Looks like a great player. And this one may feel gross, but Zach Ertz has 18 targets in 2 games, which leads all tight ends. 12 catches. Volume is king. This is a team that's going to be playing from behind quite a bit. It's the veteran tight end in Zach Ertz. There's going to be some targets there for him. He's a top 12 tight end for me this week. Players that I would sit. Jordan Love did some good things in week 1, especially on third down against the Chicago Bears. Week 2, not so much. He's got a 55.8 completion percentage. It does sound like he's going to get some help in Christian Watson and Aaron Jones coming back, but only Deshaun Watson and Zach Wilson have a lower completion percentage than Jordan Love. Tough spot against the Saints. I really believe in their defense. I will be looking at maybe Baker or Stafford as quarterbacks that would start, even Sam Howell over Jordan Love this week. Dameon Pierce. The Jags were down 4 offensive linemen last week, 82 total yards for Dameon Pierce on the season. The Jags have only allowed 83 rushing yards per game, which is inside the top 7, and 3.1 yards per carry so far. Tough sledding for Dameon Pierce. You got to think he's going to get a couple targets and catches, but we could see Singletary like we did in week 1 as well. A.J. Dillon. If Aaron Jones returns, easy fade. If Aaron Jones doesn't play, I still think a pretty easy fade. A.J. Dillon had the backfield to himself last week. Looks like he's running through mud, only 55 rushing yards, 74 yards on 28 carries. It's not efficient at all. Don't expect him to catch a lot of passes if there's no Aaron Jones, and the Saints' run D is very, very strong. Garrett Wilson is next for me as a fade. It's New England. I understand you may have to play this guy. He still has a ceiling that is wide receiver 1 like. He's got a touchdown from week 1, a touchdown in week 2, but it's the Patriots. It's Zach Wilson, the low completion percentage, and Bill Belichick taking away the opposing team's best player, right? What did you do in week 2 to Tyreek Hill after the big week 1 game? I would be playing Jordan Addison, Zay Flowers, and Nico Collins, believe it or not, over Garrett Wilson, but I understand that you may have to play this guy. I view him as a low-end wide receiver 3 this week. Marquise Brown, according to our wide receiver cornerback matchup tool, this is a very tough spot against Trayvon Diggs, 10 targets, 6 grabs, 54 yards, and a touchdown in week 2. But I would look elsewhere. I know there was a question earlier about Hollywood Brown. I would have played him in that spot, in that scenario, but I would be looking at other wide receivers if possible. Jackson Smith-Njigba, again, according to our wide receiver cornerback matchup tool, JSN has the toughest matchup on the slate this week, as he will go against slot corner Jeremy Chin. And although JSN seems like a decent PPR play, 8 catches through 2 games, the ceiling doesn't seem that high. For only 47 yards, number 3 in the offense behind DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. So JSN is a good stash. Keep him on your bench. Pick him up if he was dropped, but let's not play him just yet. Romeo Doubs, 56 yards in 2 games without Watson. Now it does sound like Watson's going to be back. I would play Jaden Reed and Luke Musgrave as a flex over Romeo at this spot. But again, I don't like Jordan Love against the Saints. Tyler Higbee, just not getting the volume that we thought. 6 catches through 2 games. Puka Nacua clearly getting a lot of the volume. Tutu Atwell, Kerwin Williams, a lot of those guys. Those are the guys that are getting the volume, and it's not Tyler Higbee. So you're not rolling Tyler Higbee out at the tight end position with 6 catches. You play Zach Ertz over him. And Dalton Schultz, I thought he would get more volume. It's only been 2 weeks. Week 2 was certainly better than week 1. I mentioned the offensive line is banged up. The volume is going to Nico Collins, Robert Woods, and Tank Dell as well. And CJ Stroud's first read has been Nico Collins. And Dalvin Cook on that list as well. I think that one's pretty obvious. I would expect Breece Hall to get more than 4 touches, but the Patriots, game total at 39 when I lean to the under there. The offensive line has some issues, and Dalvin Cook just doesn't look like he has it at the moment. So I would sit him if you could. All right. I think we are going to get out of here. I think we're going to bounce. We've gone pretty long. If there's any other questions here, I could get on the way out. By the way, pick 2, Hall, Ford, and Gainwell. I would lean with Hall and Ford there, though I don't love Hall. Last one, DST, LA Rams. Okay, what do you got here? We're getting a little choppy again. StreamYard is doing this to us. Last one, DST, you like. He's got the Rams, Burrow, others available. The Raiders against the Steelers, no. Detroit against Atlanta, no, because they're going to run. I think you want a defense against a team that's going to pass. Carolina's got Seattle, no. Washington, Buffalo, no. Denver's got Miami, no. Chargers, Minnesota, no. I would roll with the Rams. I'd roll with the Rams again. Even Burrow, not Burrow. I mean, Burrow hasn't looked fantastic. Tyler is going to put together some TikTok videos for us. Means what up? Need to start 2 of the following this week. Half point. Kendra Miller. Yeah, Kendra Miller's a sneaky little pickup too. I mean, the shelf life for Jones is short. It's probably this week. I think Jones will play over Kendra Miller this week. We have Alvin Kamara coming back in a week. I would play. Geez, you need to. Other guys that you have here, Jalen Warren, Breida, Gainwell, Jahan Dotson, Gabe Davis, Sutton. I think I'm leaning Kendra Miller, Warren, or Kendra and Dotson. Yeah, Kendra I think is maybe a little risky, Tyler, in that first game as a rookie. How much run is he really going to get? I would play Jalen Warren. Warren's getting in my lineup, catching some passes. Talked about the Raiders, 17 grabs allowed through 2 games to running backs. Not playing Gainwell, not playing Breida. I would go with Warren and Dotson. I know it hasn't been the best couple weeks for Dotson. I view him as a buy low candidate. You seem to be in on Kendra. I think it's a little risky. First game, touch risky for me as a rookie, and Jones having the game that he did with a couple touchdowns there. So I am leaning Warren and Dawson or Warren and Gabe Davis, and you hope one of those guys finds a touchdown there. But Kendra Miller's a really good pickup, and we can wait and see. Start Pickens at flex or Michael Thomas, Jaden Reed, or Cordero Patterson. Cordero Patterson's not touching my starting roster. No chance. I would go with, and I really like what I've seen from Michael Thomas, but against the Packers, I would go with Pickens. Pickens, good spot against the Raiders. It seems like Pickett is only throwing passes to Warren and Pickens, no Deontay Johnson. We saw how explosive he is after the catch. It just takes 2 or 3 grabs to rack up 100 yards. So I would go with Pickens there in that spot. And we have to get out of here. We've gone a little long. Appreciate it. If, again, you're watching the replay, meanstreetsftn@gmail.com, at Chris Meaney on the Twitter machine. Leave the comment in the YouTube section. I'll circle back tomorrow. We'll have my rankings and projections, picks, props, and we will have some DFS plays for you as well. One more time on the way out. Follow FTN Fantasy. Retweet, tag a friend, combine yards tonight for Jones and Purdy. I'm going with 440. Leave that comment, tag a friend, retweet, and follow, and we will give away $100 after the game coming your way. Appreciate you guys taking the time to hang out. We'll chat to you tomorrow. Good luck with all your props tonight. We'll talk soon. Cheers.